Isaac was riding hard. He was running. Had to. Sometimes it was all that was left for a man to do. Behind him the shots echoed as the fight kept going, but he did not mind the dead. He was not eager to get caught, maybe even hanged. He was getting old. Death was already looming closer every day. Isaac looked behind to check if any lawman might follow. He was alone. Once again he had slipped away. Too bad that with his decision to run he had also bid farewell to any money the bank contained. The devil could have it. Money was no use to a dead man. The lone outlaw kept riding. A new town would grant new chances. The sun crossed the sky as he traveled on. It was close to setting when he found a lone settlement with a well. Overwhelmed by thirst, he used the bucket to get water. He stopped every 5 minutes, afraid that a bullet might come bursting through one of the windows, or some angry inhabitant might storm out the door. With his heart almost jumping through his chest, he drank, and without looking back, he left to ride on. The sun sank, his horse grew tired, and so he made a camp. His eyes scanned the stars as the fire crackled. He had done it so often and yet never grew tired of it. When he woke up, dawn had already approached. Isaac had nodded off with his gun in his hand and his head leaning against a tree. In the distance he saw a dark figure standing still. It was right in front of him, as if it had been waiting to be seen. It seemed to be a man in a black coat and a large, broad-brimmed hat. The phantom-like appearance did not move. Isaac felt himself shiver. Before he knew, he had gotten to his feet and onto his horse's back to ride on. The next time he turned around after a while, Isaac nearly got a heart attack. There was the dark stranger on a horse, black as coal, and despite the distance, the old man could clearly see the stranger's features. His eyes were cold and unblinking, and he wore a clean grin. The pale skin seemed almost transparent, revealing black bone like onyx. A chill ran down the man's spine. He was starting to see ghosts. Maybe he was going insane. Maybe a stray bullet had hit him and this was a fever dream. The Reaper was closing in. With fear running wild inside of him, Isaac gave his horse a hard kick, whereupon the animal fell into a full gallop. Everything around turned into a wild blur when Isaac's haunted mind stopped thinking. All he could think of was running. He knew the Reaper was right behind him. He knew he could never shake him off, and yet fear never acts rational. Only shots close by let his horse skid to a halt. Alertness replaced fear as he listened through his hammering heart. The commotion was down in the canyon. Usually Isaac would have driven his horse on again, eager to leave danger behind. His eyes were glued to the canyon wall, though. Far down, right next to the end of the ravine which led to the path he had been following, was a name carved into the rock. The letters burning. It was an unholy appearance. More shots sounded. He saw men run and then die as each shot hit its mark. He couldn't turn away, so he kept staring as things unfolded. And he was still staring when from between the rocks where there had been cover, a man stepped forward. He was lean with a pistol on his hip and a rifle in his hand. The sand-colored duster coat was frayed in some places. For a moment he stood there, looking, listening, and Isaac could feel the man's ferocity as if death was his follower. Then he stepped forward to loot one body after another. The old man refrained from moving, scared he might end up dead if he did. But then the man in the canyon fell still, and with a motion like a predator he turned his head, the eyes piercing Isaac. He felt himself grow pale. The outlaw in the canyon whistled whereupon a grey horse came trotting from far behind. Someone or something was sitting cross-legged in the saddle. Isaac glanced behind. The Reaper was still there in the distance, but he had stopped closing in. Was he watching? Or did he know that whatever would happen next would make his job easier? One quick decision let Isaac turn his horse, or would have. A shot let his horse jump, throwing him off. When Isaac got up, he saw the outlaw's rifle aim at him. The man in the canyon had missed him deliberately. With the rifle still aiming, he stepped closer, even climbed up the ravine. His horse never stayed far behind. The saddle was now empty, making the old man doubt his own sanity. Isaac held up his hands as a gesture of being not out for violence. He could not help but take a few steps back. His eyes flicked from the carnage below and back to the man who seemed to have eyes made of hellfire. "You with them?" he asked when he was close enough. "I'm not with anyone, good sir." They stared at each other for a moment. The outlaw was much younger, but his eyes weren't. His eyes were the ones of an old man. Isaac felt a twinge of compassion all of a sudden. There he was, running from death, meeting a man who was only alive in body. "Where did you fight, son?" The man hesitated, a predator weighing his options. "Confederate cavalry," he finally answered in a detached manner. Isaac nodded to show his acknowledgement. "That's a beautiful horse you have." The young stranger did not reply. His hand tensed as his gaze grew sharp and cold. He was preparing to shoot his way out of the situation. Isaac only smiled. "I'm not trying to threaten you with false sympathy. I am sincere." He paused. The younger man listened. "The feds are on your trail. A lone wolf cannot survive for long under such circumstances. I'll take most of them with me." The stranger countered. He wasn't cocky. He was focused, calculated, and resigned. "The war hurt you good, didn't it?" The war done what it was meant to do. It was a short-lived moment of a weary soul before the steely glint crept into the grey eyes again. "Let's just shoot him and be done with it," a new voice spoke. Forgetting the pistol for a moment, Isaac looked behind the man with the gun. There was the figure again, sitting cross-legged in the saddle, smoking some kind of pipe like a Native American. The face was concealed by a terrible mask painted black with red markings around eyes and mouth. Black feathers had been woven into the black hair, giving it an even more intimidating look. Orange-brown eyes glowed behind the mask, mustering Isaac. He wore the same garments as the native tribes. The chest was bare and covered in burns on the right shoulder down to the abdomen. And then the old man noticed that creature had wings, red-orange wings on which the secondaries and primaries were snow-white. "Oh, you can see me," the creature uttered. "Death is on your trail, I see." He mocked the old man with his voice roughened by smoke. It sounded more like grinding stones. "What you looking at?" The outlaw's harsh voice caused Isaac's mind to tumble back to the present threat. There!" He just pointed at the native creature. The man did not turn, he only eyed the old man. "Maybe we should keep him," the entity said thoughtfully. The outlaw did not react. Could he not see? Isaac thought for a moment. It seemed he could see spirits now that he was marked by the Reaper. "Done the war take your damn wits," the outlaw snarled. The old man would have loved to tell that he hadn't fought on either side, for he assumed that man in front of him headed out for the Union so early after the war, and being not part of it made him not necessarily an ally. "He's a coward, Nate. He didn't fight anywhere." "Shut your damn—" Isaac started before remembering that the man named Nate did not hear nor see his company. Realizing his mistake, he dodged just in time to avoid the bullet meant for his head. "Please, dear sir, I wasn't speaking to you." "Who are you speaking to?" the outlaw yelled, already aiming again. "The man who called you Nate." The stranger fell still at those words. Isaac needed a moment before he dared to look up again. The rifle was suddenly sinking a slight bit. The old man remembered the name carved into the canyon wall. "Nathaniel Connor," he said. "Is that you?" "Yeah," he uttered, and the tone of his voice indicated that he didn't like it one bit. Yet he slung his rifle over his shoulder. "All right," he grinned at his teeth. "You want to stay? Stay. Right where I can shoot you." Nathaniel climbed on his horse. The strange creature had vanished. "No, I haven't," it whispered behind Isaac. The old man almost jumped out of his skin. What are you?" "I am Apikani. I am the god of war, and I am little Nate's patron saint." "Come on," the outlaw uttered. "Enough spirit talk. Got to find your horse." Isaac's horse hadn't been far, only too far for a man with a gun trained on him. Nathaniel did not care for getting known or knowing. To him, Isaac was a dead man, sooner or later. If that was due to the fact that he was old, life rough, or because the outlaw intended to shoot him, Isaac did not know. Nor was it clear where they were going. Nathaniel seemed to follow the sun or the stars, depending on how he felt. He hunted, he killed strangers he could rob, he avoided towns. He lived like a coyote who was giving in to the sickness that ailed him, a sickness called bloodlust. Isaac kept following along for the same reason small fishes stay with sharks. It was safe, for the moment. As long as he did not talk too much, Nathaniel couldn't care less if his company fell behind or kept up. Only Apikani seemed to delight in mocking Isaac, calling him a coward and trampling on his dignity, but on the third day he finally had enough. The rabbit Nathaniel had shot and skinned was barely cooked when he started to wolf it down. There are people who prefer to live like people. Nathaniel stopped eating and fixed the old man. He didn't speak. That's how it always was. He only stared like a cobra about to bite, but he didn't argue, didn't shout. He remained silent or he shot, no warning. Apikani didn't pay attention. He just smoked his pipe. The mask he hadn't taken off once yet. All Isaac got were glimpses from the side below the temple. A charred, bony structure was the only thing he could see on one side. The ear, too, was torn and burned. He assumed that the right part of the god's face was even more hideous than those scars on his chest. "Don't like it? Go," the outlaw uttered between two bites. "You know, maybe that's what I should do." He got up and walked to his horse. He had no use for company, only out for blood. Isaac wanted money, wanted a good life, and Nathaniel did not care either way, nor did he stop his company from leaving. Without another word, Isaac trotted away through the night. He entered a small town in the early morning where he paid for a room before falling into bed. There wasn't enough money for food, so he bought a few cartridges at the gunsmith and waited for evening. He was about to approach an elderly man when the shadow of a rider appeared farther ahead. With his black coat and hat, he raised his hand to point at Isaac. "You are done soon," he seemed to say. The old man felt himself grow pale as his heart sank. With the knife still in his hand, he turned and scrambled onto his horse. He rode into the opposite direction, out of town, away from the Reaper. He had been stupid, leaving Nathaniel when the man had made death go away. But Nathaniel was gone, on fire, abandoned and burned down long since. Isaac could only follow the tracks in the mud and hope to not be led astray. Hunger let him almost pass out when the sun stood high. He felt pretty roasted himself. He could feel the Reaper on his trail, cold and unwavering. He followed, just out of reach and yet close enough to breathe down Isaac's neck. It was the scream of a man in pain that let him snap fully awake. His horse stopped to prick his ears as well. A shot echoed. It was followed by another scream. The voice of whoever was in pain was growing weaker. Fear caused the old man to freeze. He could stay with the Reaper or check out what was happening and possibly die. Neither was his favorite option, but the fear of the Reaper was greater. A while passed in which Isaac urged his horse deeper into the mountains. It was when he heard another voice that hope welled up inside of him, although hope was a strong word. Nathaniel hissed at his whimpering victim without compassion before inflicting more pain, which caused a sickeningly wet noise and more whimpering. The older man saw a bloody trail leading ahead. His blood froze, and yet he kept going. "Just let it all out, boy." Apicani's voice encouraged the man. Isaac found the massacre when he rounded a boulder. It was an awfully grotesque scene in which one man was already dead, the other bled out from the large gash in his belly. The outlaw had torn out the man's guts. His right hand, holding the knife, was covered in blood as he stared at the dying soldier. The old native god was, again, smoking his pipe as he enjoyed the view. The dead man with the cut throat seemed to have been a ranger. The tortured victim who gasped for air, however, wore a blue uniform. Nathaniel turned slowly towards Isaac, his expression unreadable and cold. "Thought you're gone for good," he only sneered with a cocky grin. Sent high by the carnage around, he looked like a demon himself. "I'm thinking of rather taking my chances with the Reaper," Isaac answered, unable to hide the tremble in his voice. The dying man on the ground reached out with his hand, yet no word sounded when he opened his mouth. There only was the pleading gaze directed at the old man. Isaac's hand went to his pistol. He had one, obviously, but he had rarely used it in the past. The sound of a hammer being pulled back made him stop and look back at Nathaniel. The outlaw was aiming at his company with his own weapon. "He don't deserve easy rest," he only growled. There was that piercing look in those grey eyes again, the shine of a predator's eyes. "Do you have no compassion?" Isaac exclaimed before turning to Apicani. "And you are the god of war. How can you support such cruelty?" "It's on Nate to wage this war. I have no care in the methods used." The god waggled his index finger, but the way Apicani inclined his head, the way those eyes glowed, Isaac knew the god enjoyed it. Quick steps let the old man snap back to the outlaw, but Nathaniel was already in front of him, taking the pistol. "I got enough of your spirits and reapers," he lectured Isaac. "But it's real." "Humbug! If there's God, then where was he when I needed him?" Nathaniel thundered. With rage contorting his features, he challenged Isaac for a second before uttering, "There ain't no afterlife and there ain't no angels. You're just some mad old man, and I can't figure out why I even put up with you." Isaac could only stand there, struck mute by the fury. He looked back at the Yankee. The man's eyes stared ahead without life. The old man knew what had happened in the war, and in some places before, and in other places after. Whatever Nathaniel had lost, it had taken his soul with it. It was when the outlaw turned around that Isaac saw a bloody spot on his shoulder and another just above the hip. Not even bullets could slow that man. Before he could say anything, though, Nathaniel stopped amidst walking. Then he fell and remained still. Apicani only sighed and put out his pipe. "There we go again," he sighed. "Not enough food and too much blood loss." Spreading his wings, he sauntered from his rocky seat to the outlaw's side. "If you stick to us like rotten honey, you might as well be useful," the god called to Isaac, who was still having troubles to act with those bodies around. What can I do?" "Find food. Poor fella hasn't eaten anything other than that skinny rabbit in 4 days." The old man swallowed when he realized his only option. The gutted soldier carried 2 hardtacks and a few scraps of salted meat. The ranger carried $5. In the meantime, the old god healed Nathaniel's wounds and put him onto his grey horse, which he led. "Hurry up, will you?" he called over his shoulder in an annoyed voice. He stopped when he saw Isaac avoid guts and blood. "What kind of thief are you? Is there anything you are good at apart from running?" Isaac did not answer. Truth was, he wasn't good at much. He didn't have the guts to protect nor kill, and he had never been good at honest labor either. His go-to solution was running, always had been. When he had finally scrambled onto his own horse, Apicani shook his head and led the way. Better to leave the crime behind before resting. With the old god's powers, their horses ran swift as the wind, with hooves on fire. Isaac started to understand how the outlaw could have survived so long despite his hideous acts towards the Union. Apicani was strangely caring towards the outlaw. He even had fished when it was clear that the stolen food was not enough for two, although fishing was not quite the right term. He had sung in some tribal language, and the fish had just jumped out of the river onto dry land. It was magic. All of it had to be. Old gods were no better than demons, causing nothing but doom. "You are not here to help him," Apicani ripped the old man out of his thoughts. A grin in the god's voice let him suggest the god knew what he had been thinking about. "Not even to get helped and repay the debt." He took a deep drag from his pipe and let his eyes glow. "You are a coward. Always have been. You were looking for a new companion who you can sacrifice once it is convenient, so you can keep running from death. And that is the reason he should drop you. That's why he will drop you. Just give it time, old boy." Apicani winked at the man, and even if the mask didn't show it, Isaac knew the old god smiled. "Why can't he see you?" Isaac motioned at Nathaniel, still unconscious. Only God knew how long he'd been without sleep. "Because I don't want him to." "But you are marked by death. You are halfway gone already." A shiver went down the old man's spine at those words. The outlaw's stirring let them pause. He turned and twisted, even seemed to say something, but he did not wake. Isaac expected nightmares to be the cause. Whatever haunted the man had him in its iron thrall. "You only lead him deeper into misery with your dark arts," he accused the god. "The hatred is his own. He chose this path. And you encourage it." Triggered by Isaac's agitated voice, Nathaniel snapped awake, his hand holding the pistol aimed at the old man. The eyes were wide and indicated a mind far away. At once Isaac put up his hands. "Don't shoot me!" He tried to come up with a reason without finding one. Nathaniel remained frozen for a moment before blinking. Slowly he came back to himself, lowering the Colt. He didn't speak a word, only put away the weapon and lit a cigarette. No, it wasn't a cigarette. He chewed tobacco. He did it the whole time. This was something else. It smelled awful. "That's right, boy. You draw it in deep," Apicani commented. "You will turn into a black lung if you keep smoking poison like that." Nate only scoffed. "Better nature's poison than the damn bluebellies." Silence reigned after the fierce remark. Nathaniel smoked, then he wolfed down the food. He seemed to not remember what had happened right before he passed out, or maybe he assumed Isaac had carried him all the way and helped him recover. Paying no heed to his body's demands, he got up. "You need rest," the old man remarked firmly when Nathaniel put out the fire. "Ain't no rest in hell. There's a demon on your shoulder." "The devil himself can be on my shoulder for all I care, as long as it allow me to keep going." There was no trace of the earlier rage in his voice now. It was calm and focused. "Keep going for what? What are you trying to do here? Shoot the whole Union army?" "If that's what it take." He stepped to his horse, but stopped before mounting. Turning his head to the side, he spoke in an almost warm manner. "I ain't changing. Might as well move on and find another partner." Isaac turned to look into the distance behind him. There he was again, the shadowy figure. This time he held a scythe. "I'm running out of time," he muttered to himself. "Time for what?" The old man only shook his head. "I don't know, but I think I should stick with you." Another scoff sounded. "Ain't going to save your ass." They rode through the wilderness without pause. Nathaniel's silence gave Isaac a lot of time to think. About himself, about death, but strangely enough, also about that other man tormented by life. He was starting to feel compassion for someone, he noticed. Not pity, nor did he see how he could benefit. He honestly felt the want to be friends. He'd never really had friends. He'd stuck around the rich and mighty, been the dirt beneath their boots in exchange for survival. Nathaniel was genuine. Even Apikani was genuine. They had no use for pretenses. They might not mind Isaac dying, but neither did they kick him in the face for fun and games. Perhaps they even accepted him. His own father had despised his cowardly son. His mother had denied him love in an effort to make him tougher. Isaac had remained a coward, and he would die a coward one day. The amount of people he had pushed over the edge just to not fall himself, he had lost count over. Everyone expected despicable acts from a coward, and up to now he had always delivered. But somehow, whenever Nathaniel acknowledged his efforts, his help, something inside him lit up. But the illusion of making friends with Nathaniel Connor fell apart when a group of outlaws crossed their path. One of them recognized the lone rebel. There were many posters of him, apparently. The moment the shooting started, the lie of being brave came crashing down when Isaac hid behind a tree. He held his Colt in his trembling hands as the bullets whistled past the trunk which shielded him. He just could not do it, could not bring himself to face danger and death. He was a dog, meant to endure his owner's kicks without ever biting back. Hearing a low, begging voice, Isaac gathered enough courage to leave his shelter. One last bandit was on the ground. He had lost his gun and held up his hands to protect himself. Nathaniel loomed above him with a steely expression and the pistol cocked. "Nathaniel, don't!" the old man shouted before he could prevent himself from doing so. "Shoot him, Nate! We don't take prisoners." Apikani chimed in. As if he had heard the casual remark, Nathaniel pulled the trigger. An icy silence followed the echo. Not even the birds sang now. "He pleaded for life," Isaac confronted the outlaw. "He crossed me. I let him go, he might come back." And then he added, "I don't take prisoners." Those last words sent a chill down Isaac's spine. "Don't you see what you're doing to him? He's turning into a murderer. He will go to hell," he addressed the old god. "Don't tell me you care." "Spirit talk again?" Nathaniel uttered, unimpressed. "Suit me well. I need to do some business anyway." The old man waited for his company to be out of earshot as he went to relieve himself. "You don't tell me what I feel," Isaac hissed. He was actually getting angry, he realized. "I tell you what your conscience says. You sacrifice others to get another chance. No matter how you go on, there's only one way for you to go." Apikani pointed down to the ground, causing the old man to grind his teeth. He shouldn't be surprised. A bad life, in short, a bad afterlife. "If I choose to go, you will keep him safe. Lead him towards a kinder life. Keep him out of hell." The old god cocked his head at the unforeseen statement. "Is this a deal?" "Maybe it is." "If you go, then it has to be a true act of courage." "Are you done? We got to go," Nathaniel announced, ripping both man and god out of their staring contest. Isaac hadn't even noticed the handshake until he looked down to see his hand in the god's firm grip. Apikani only looked at him with mischief. Travels went on. Killing people went on. Isaac sometimes slipped into a town to buy supplies with stolen money he had taken from dead, bloody hands, and robbed from pockets of tortured victims. Sometimes he went to stop Nathaniel from having his way. Sometimes he did not. Once, Nathaniel even knocked out the old man. By the time Isaac regained consciousness, the poor Union soldier was already dead. He had died painfully. And every time there was the creeping guilt of not having been able to turn the outlaw back to a better path. away from senseless murder. He was about to give up on his whole idea, go back to being a coward everyone spit on, maybe even go and face the Reaper. The survivor instinct always kicked in though, right before the old man could ride off and vanish forever. Apicani mocked him whenever he failed and reminded him of the deal. It seemed that Nathaniel could truly only be saved at the cost of Isaac's own life. Every time, however, that little voice inside spoke up again, wondering why he should give his life for a stubborn stranger too hateful to appreciate life. All those thoughts were scattered when he entered yet another town after dark. The dark felt safe, or safe enough. He had been wrong. The bat-wing doors had barely stopped swinging when the sheriff took Isaac by the shoulder. Murder rarely went unnoticed, and in Nathaniel's case people had started taking action. Seeing a certain man in town shortly after or before murder had caused alarm. "We would like to talk with you, mister." The old man stiffened. Nathaniel would have shot his way to freedom, but Isaac could only follow meekly as he was led to the sheriff's office where 2 rangers waited. And seeing another group of men not far off when he had stepped out of the saloon, he knew there were federals as well. A lot of them. They sat him down in front of the sheriff's desk. Isaac did not move. He barely dared to breathe. In his mind, he already had a noose around his neck. "Settle down, old fella," the sheriff said in a friendly way. He sat down, took off his hat, and stroked his dark mustache, which showed grey strands. One of the rangers in his brown coat, a very young-looking man, leaned against the wall. His green eyes showed hostility, but he refrained from speaking. "We just want to talk," the sheriff added. "Talk?" "Yes," the sheriff nodded. "You see, there have been very unsettling crimes committed by a man named Nathaniel Corner." The tone was casual, yet the face showed that they knew who Isaac was traveling with. "I would be open to striking a bargain." He knew what this was about. Many criminals got the offer of being pardoned for selling out a friend. Part of him practically jumped at the offer. Another, weaker part, wanted to be loyal to the outlaw. "He won't care for me," Isaac argued weakly. "I see," the sheriff replied with a sigh. His eyes hardened a little. "Then I'm afraid I have to take you in for your own crimes, as you can't be of help to us after all." This was it. The chips had fallen. In the morning he would swing. The realization paralyzed him. Only when he was dragged to his feet did he snap back to the present. "No, wait!" The sheriff turned around, waiting for the right words. "I know where he is." They rode at once. Isaac, the sheriff, the rangers, and 10 men of the Union Army out for retribution. When they were close to the forest, the old man was sent ahead. The rest would follow out of sight. He had barely entered the makeshift camp where Nathaniel grilled at dark when Apicani fixed him with a piercing gaze. The wings spread, he looked like a bird intimidating his foe, and in his hand he held a tomahawk, like the native tribes used them. "You!" he only cried in anger. "To think he spared you! I spared you! And you lead the enemy right to us!" Nathaniel, still oblivious to his coming death, looked up. "You got what you want?" "No," Isaac replied in a low voice. Regret and guilt were suddenly strangulating him. It hurt worse than a rope. He never got to finish his sentence when the sheriff called out for Nathaniel to surrender. All around them, muskets suddenly pointed out of the bushes. Slowly the group closed in. The outlaw looked around, weighing, calculating, and Isaac knew he would be shot down like a dog. Not far behind Nathaniel, the Reaper stood. His face grim, he looked at Isaac. The old man understood. Not Nathaniel, but he was supposed to die. And yet he was exchanging his own life for someone else's. "We go down fighting, Nate. That's how warriors do it," Apicani cried right before launching forward. Chaos broke loose when out of nothing a man lost his head. The headless body dropped bleeding to the ground. The sheriff was about to shoot, but Nathaniel aimed true and hit the man, causing him to fall. Everyone fired and everyone ran for cover to not get shot. Only Apicani did not bother shielding Nathaniel when the first volley came, which was supposed to end the outlaw's life. The fight carried on for several minutes. Isaac was behind a tree trunk again, and he hated himself for it. He had been meant to die back then, there with the noose around his neck, but the rope had snapped, and he had run, whilst his partners had fought and died. Those partners who had come to save him had died because of his cowardice, and the Reaper had been waiting ever since, and suddenly the Reaper stood in front of Isaac, tall, thin and menacing. The scythe, in which several symbols were engraved, gave off a ghostly shine. "No, I can't." The old man got up. There suddenly was the weight of his own pistol in his right hand. "I know my life wasn't good, but with a little more time I can change it." Without thinking, he turned to join the fight. He shot one man, missed another. A bullet hit him in the shoulder. He shot again. This time he hit. Apicani stopped dead once he saw Isaac making a stand. His mask had cracked and fallen apart, revealing a truly terrible sight. The old man had been right. Half of his face was terribly burned, exposing bone and teeth. The left side of his lips he had drawn back in a snarl. It gave him the appearance of a demon's visage, covered in war paint. Nathaniel kneeled. There was blood all around him from a wound on his thigh. There was more blood on his face and head. Nothing could stop him from keeping fighting, though. His pistol had been emptied, so that he had to fire with his rifle. It was when the old god was busy killing a man who had taken cover behind a rock that two other men charged at Nathaniel. They didn't shoot. They came with bayonets. The outlaw wanted to get up, struggled for balance, and sank back down. He shot one of the approaching men, but the second kicked him in the chest. Nathaniel toppled backwards. The rifle fell and remained out of his reach. Before he could get up, the bayonet was about to pierce his throat. Isaac reacted on instinct. He shot, but the bullet missed. He pulled the trigger, but the chamber was empty, so he just leapt at the soldier. The old man went straight for the throat, squeezing as hard as he could. He felt a piercing pain that went deep. There was no time to look. Killing was the only thing on his mind. He just kept squeezing. He saw the man's eyes bulge and grow red, his face flushed. His tongue seemed to grow larger as he tried to breathe. And then it was over. Isaac collapsed. Opening his eyes, he got to his feet and turned to Nathaniel. He was afraid to meet the man's eyes. To his surprise, the outlaw only stared. He did not seem angry or happy. He seemed sad, shocked even. That was when the old man felt a presence behind him. He turned to see the Reaper. He looked down to see his body on the ground. "I died," he muttered. Nathaniel tried to scramble to Isaac's body, yet failed. He was barely staying conscious. The old man felt his heart sink, not out of fear, but out of grief. "I just died. Now he's alone again." "I take no pleasure in this, my child. I simply collect the name whispered by fate." Death put his hand on the man's shoulder. It was icy cold as well as comforting, and as if answering Isaac's fearful thoughts, he added, "Your fate would have been worse had you kept running." Apicani's eyes met Isaac's when the man turned to the Reaper to follow the portal which had appeared. There was acknowledgement in the god's expression. "Now you got it," the god spoke. The old man turned back to Nathaniel. "Don't linger," Death remarked. "It will only let you wither." "I take care of Nate. A deer is a deer after all." "Rest easy, old fella." Still uncertain and yet more hopeful, Isaac stepped into the light. The crackling fire was the only sound amidst the desert. Nathaniel had ridden and ridden after burying the old man. He didn't know what his role had been in the ambush, nor did it matter. He had died for an outlaw who would not have given a shit about his company, And he did not know what was worse, the guilt of not being warmer towards the old man, or the grief of losing the only company he had had. For there would be no other in the future. His family had taken with them his soul. The old man had shattered what had remained of his heart. It was no good. Getting used to people. He was damned, and he would damn everyone who rode with him. Maybe that was his punishment. Maybe the devil was already starting his games up here. A bottle of whiskey stood next to him. He had bought it in the last town right before the Mexican border. He drank and stared into the flames, imagining what it must have been like to be trapped in a burning house, possibly screaming his name as they died. Tears started streaming down his face. If bandits would have come now, he would have just waited for them to end him. Nathaniel took his pistol. He looked at it for a long while, then he took another sip and put the barrel to his head. Things would never get better, would never stop hurting. His best option was to just be done with it. "Keep going, boy," a rough voice called out. He looked ahead to see a strange figure standing behind the fire. It looked like a native. He wore a mask, but he had wings. "I must be dreaming," Nathaniel uttered, blaming the whiskey. "It's not over yet," the native added. "Exactly. War never ends. That's the issue." "Put down the gun, Nate. Put it away. You're not alone." The figure only replied, and the warmth in that voice made Nathaniel obey against his will. He let the pistol sink, then he took another deep drink. He almost choked on the whiskey, especially when the tears flowed even more. Exhausted, he fell onto his side, remembering, grieving, crying. Nathaniel went into the bank. The plan was clear: threaten people, get the cash, get out. Outside, his two partners would help, and it came to a shootout. Everything went smoothly until he exited. Apicani was watching from a roof. He was always close enough to keep Nathaniel alive. If he died now, he would go to hell. And Apicani was interested in upholding his end of the deal. The old god knew Nathaniel was aware of him and his partners having overdone it over the past month. Robbing trains and banks did not attract as many guns as hunting feds, and yet it caused problems, especially if done too often in a row. And the past years had left their marks on the outlaw. He was growing old himself, and weary. He had choked his vengeful fire to stay alive, just as the god had told him that night long ago. And also because the mortal knew it was eating up his soul, whatever was left of it. He was still a criminal, but he had stopped being a cold-blooded murderer. He was no Samaritan by any means. Apicani himself was not innocent. Everyone had to start somewhere, though. He was just about to intervene as one after another the bandits went down, and only Nate kept up the fight. When out of nothing lightning hit the earth, ending the fight. The old god observed closely as things unfolded. Nathaniel was approached by 3 people. No, 2 people. The third, the old god could barely believe it. The third was Lucifer himself. But he seemed not himself. His power was almost non-existent. His glow had dimmed. His arrogant, menacing aura was gone. It had been centuries since Apicani and his fellow demons had escaped hell to become gods. Funny how paths could cross several times, and how souls could change. Apicani kept observing. It seemed the trio wanted Nate to come along, and he had the feeling things would fall into place for the old rebel, now that he was riding with the Morning Star. "Seems my work here is done,"